Hello, everyone. This is Mary Ann, and I have finally decided on what to do for this year's One Book July challenge. This year's challenge is Go Big or Go Home, and I am up to it. I am up to the challenge, but I also liked last year's version, which was version 2, and it was called One Pen, One Project, One Month. And it was very helpful for me. And I have a bunch of videos about it, which I will link down below. So I am going to do a version 2 this year, but also merge it with this year's challenge, which is Go Big or Go Home. And my Go Big for this year will be I will be using a big nib, something that I don't normally use. Now, I use fountain pens whenever I journal, as you will probably see if you watch my older videos about journaling. And I usually use medium or fine or extra fine nibs. And I wanted to try journaling using a big nib, a really big nib, which I will show you later. Here I am cleaning out the converter for the Lamy All-Star Pacific fountain pen. That is the limited edition color for 2017, and I picked it up last June 7. I even vlogged about going to the store and buying it. I also bought another one of these pens, which I have set up as a giveaway on my YouTube channel, which I will link down below. But here is how you put in the converter in the Lamy pen. You simply notch that rounded thing on the converter into the space for it on the section of the pen. Now, that pen has an extra fine nib. That is the nib that came with the pen, and I am going to change that up. I'm going to use a different nib. For the pen, I'm going to use a really, really big nib. This is my stash of Lamy nibs. As you might have probably heard, you can switch out the nibs on a Lamy pen. The nibs for the Lamy Safari and the Lamy All-Star are the same, so you can keep switching the nibs. Most of these nibs are medium because they're usually the size of nibs that go with every Lamy purchase. And I'm going to be using that nib that I chose. If you can see this, the tip of it is very, very wide. And there I am showing you a black Lamy nib that is labeled MK. It's actually a medium nib. The size of the line it lays down medium, but it came in a special edition pen from previous years. And that is just me looking through all of the Lamy nibs that I have and see exactly how many italic 1.5 nibs I have because I have forgotten. There I found another one. It's 1.5 millimeters. That's the only kind of italic nib that I have for the Lamy. Lamy also has the 1.1 millimeter. There's another black extra fine that came with a special edition pen. Lamy also has the 1.1 millimeter italic nib and the 1.7 millimeter italic nib, but the 1.7 would be too big for me. And the 1.1, I have tried it out before and I didn't like it. It didn't have a lot of drama in the lines. I don't know how to call it, but if when I use an italic nib, I want it to be noticeable that I'm using an italic nib as opposed to just using a broad. And I will be showing writing samples of an italic nib later, and we'll be discussing what makes it different. But so really that's it. I wanted an italic 1.5 millimeter nib for use in this year's One Book July challenge. That would be my go big for this year. As to what I'm going to be journaling about, I do have to deal with some ideas that I've been having floating around in my head regarding the framework that I have to use for my graduate thesis. Um, I have written down some things, but those were not enough for my teacher or for my professor. So I really don't know what to do. She gave me guidance and I'm trying to follow it, but I've been having a burnout uh, for a while. So I'm really using this One Book July challenge to get something down on paper, and writing the framework down on A4 size paper or typing it up in my computer on a word processing software is too, like academic, and too, and when I am writing in my academic mode, I feel so constricted because there are jargon that I have to use and certain ways of saying things that I have to follow, and that's the frame of mind that I'm in when I'm writing in an A4 sheet or typing things up on my computer. So I want it to be a journaling style thing in order for me to, be freer with what I am writing. Now, I might as well show you all the pens that I have while I have my pen case out. That is the pen that I used for last year's One Book July, and you will see it in the videos that I will have linked down below. And I that one slot is empty because I'm using the pen. It's for the Pelikan White Tortoise M400, and those colored ones are the Lamy Safaris, and the nibs are stored in an ink vial from Goulet Pens, and I just place them on that slot over there. Yeah, so those are the pens that I have. I still have a few pens in their boxes because that pen case can only carry 20 pens, and I have more than 20 fountain pens. So those are all the pens that can fit on there. But I do have to buy another one of those pen cases. That is a limited edition color. Also, the other ones that I am pointing to, I forget the year in which they were released, but those are not the regular Lamy colors. And for the All Stars, the green, the champagne, and the brown are special edition ones that are not available all the time. And I have the Vanishing Point in chrome, and the brown one is another Pelikan, and that demonstrator one is the very first Pelikan fountain pen that I have purchased. Okay, so now it's time to put the italic nib onto the Lamy All-Star Pacific. And it's really easy to switch out a Lamy nib. You just grab onto the side, pull it out, and then I'm turning this over so you can see better. You just simply slot in the sides of the steel nib onto those protrusions on the side of the feed, and make sure that it's all the way down and there is no space. And it's just as easy as that. And I am now returning that extra fine nib into the container that I have and putting it back onto the pen case. So now I have the 1.5 italic nib on my Lamy All-Star Pacific. I'm really, really excited. And I'm the kind of fountain pen user who does not use cartridges. I really, really like using bottled fountain pen inks. So I also purchased the matching ink for that pen. It's the Lamy Pacific. And let me just show you the box for a while. There is a collar inside the bottle to make refilling easier when the ink is low on volume. And on the side of the bottle, there is a dispenser of blotting paper. And Lamy recommends that this is how you use it. That's what you use to wipe off your pen after you have refilled it, or when there is nib creep, that's what you use to wipe the pen with or wipe the nib with. But I don't really use it that way. I just use tissue because there, that is the blotting paper. I really just use tissue to wipe off the pen after refilling it. And I have shown before how to refill a converter in a fountain pen, but I am going to show it again for this video because I'm going to have to refill that pen anyway. So first you have to depress the plunger all the way down by twisting the converter the correct way. In this case, it's counterclockwise. And just make sure that there is no more air trapped in the section, and then slowly turn the button clockwise until it doesn't move anymore because that means the plunger is all the way up and the converter has sucked up all of the ink that it can carry. As you can see, we have been successful. There are a few bubbles inside, but that's okay. It's not a problem. And then we just wipe off the nib with a piece of tissue and then put the barrel back on, and that's really it. When I was starting out with fountain pens, I found it really messy, but now there's almost no mess. And I'm going to be journaling inside my planner. I have a section dedicated to journaling inside my planner, and I have a setup video of that particular binder linked down below. This is my journal section, and that line paper there is Tomoe River paper with a 5mm rule. I decided not to soak the nib before using it, but when you write with a new fountain pen for the very first time, the first several strokes are not going to write anything down, so you just have to scribble it away. And the thing to remember when writing with an italic nib is to write with the tip slanting on the paper. The slant should be at a 45-degree angle so you can get both the thin lines and the broad lines. Now, this is one of the uses for that lamy blotting paper that is attached to the bottle. When you are laying down a very wet line, a very fat line, sorry about that sticky thing, I don't know where that came from. When writing down a thick, wet line and you're in a hurry to turn the page, you use that blotting paper to dry it up so that it won't smear when you turn the page. And the ink was not wet. You dry it up with that piece of blotting paper, but I don't really like the effect of of I don't like how the writing looks when you use blotting paper on it when it's still wet. And I will tell you why, and I will show you why. So those two lines have been blotted after I have written them. Now I am going to write down the same thing, but I am not going to blot it. Instead, I'm going to wait for the ink to dry naturally on the paper, and I will show you the difference later and discuss it with you. The Lamy has a grip on the section. It has a guide where you can place your finger, so it's really quite easy to get that 45-degree angle in order to achieve that slanted look. Now, as you can see, the first two lines are lighter because when the ink was still wet, I blotted it out with a blotting paper, which you can do with tissue paper also, by the way. The third and the fourth lines have not been blotted, and look at that shading right there. I really, really like that. That's one of the reasons why I prefer fountain pens. It's because of the effect of the ink on the paper when the ink pools on certain parts of your hand stroke of your handwriting, and there are dark parts and there are light parts, and you can only get that with a fountain pen. You can't get that with a roller ball or a felt tip marker or a ballpoint. You can't get that. And you can only get that from fountain pens, and I really like it. So that's why I don't blot my writing, because I want to get that effect on my paper. And that paper that I have just taken out, the blank one, is something that I have cut down from a Rhodia pad. Uh, the Rhodia pad uses Clairefontaine paper that is suitable for fountain pens, so it can show shading, because some papers, which are not suitable for fountain pens, absorb all the ink right at once, so there is no pooling of the ink temporarily on the surface of the paper, so you don't get that effect right there that you can see. The dark lines, the dark splotches, and the slightly lighter parts of the strokes. If a paper absorbs that right away, then you don't get that effect. So the Clairefontaine paper is suitable for fountain pens because of that, and it also does not bleed through on the other side. And I actually like the effect of the ink on the Tomoe River paper better because it does feather a little bit on the Rhodia. So I guess I'm just going to use the Tomoe River paper, lined paper that I have for One Book July instead of the Rhodia. So that's really it. This is where I'm going to journal. And let me just write down a couple more lines to demonstrate how to write with an italic pen, which I really, really enjoy. It makes me write slower, but it's actually okay. I do need to write down slower because if I write too fast, I'm too comfortable writing with a medium or a fine or an extra fine nib that I write too fast that when I have to go back to what I have written, I can't read them. And this time I have to write slow because I don't know. I might have to ask my advisor or my professor to read some parts of what I have written. And it's important for them to be able to read what I have written. And it's important for me to be able to read what I have written. So it's important to write slow, and the italic might help me to write slow. And because I'm not sure if I have enough Tomoe River paper, I might have to use the Rhodia paper eventually. So because they are unlined, I'm going to use sort of like a template. That's just an ordinary graph paper with a 5 millimeter grid. So I laid down the lines, and then you can see the dark lines showing through the blank paper. And I now am sure that I'm going to have to use the Rhodia paper eventually because I don't have enough ruled Tomoe River paper. And when I'm writing, I actually take out the page from my journal. So this is just me demonstrating how I'm going to do it. When I'm writing on the back side of the paper, the template, the graph paper, also has dark lines on the back side of it. And I'm just going to line the two papers up and then write in my journal. And that's how I'm going to do it, pretty much the same as how I did it last year. I have gone through my stash of Tomoe River paper. These are the Da Vinci Rhomany inserts for the personal size. They are cut down to personal size exactly. It's called the DR337L. It's the 6.5 millimeter ruled cream paper from Rhomany Da Vinci, and the holes are exactly the same as the Filofax personal size and the Franklin Covey compact size. And I do have only a a pack left. There are 100 sheets to a pack, and then I have another pack that has less than 100 sheets. The graph paper is also from Rhomany Da Vinci, and I use them to print my planner inserts on, and I still have several. I'm still good to go for, I hope, the rest of the year. But as for the ruled, I don't have much. I actually prefer the 5 millimeter rule, but I don't have that anymore, and they're actually more expensive than the 6.5 millimeter. And since I'm going to be writing big this year, I'm going to be okay with using that. And just in case I run out, which I know I will, I will be cutting down these pages from the Rhodia pad that I've had a while. Sorry for the dust on the cover. I just took it out of the shelf without noticing that it had dust on it. And those are the Rhodia pads that I have. I can just cut the paper down to size. And these are all the things that I plan to do for this year's One Book July challenge. Please remember to subscribe to my channel so that you can get notifications whenever I upload the next videos related to One Book July this year. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, bye!